This is Story Recapped. Today, I'm going to explain a drama, mystery, and sci-fi show called The X-Files +1. Spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. At a rock event, Arky Seavers gets into the music and climbs onto the stage to do a stage dive. The crowd cheers as they carry him, but Arky's mood turns into horror when he sees someone who looks like him at the back of the crowd. The other man glares at him, so Arky climbs off the crowd and makes his way through to confront his lookalike, only to find him already at the exit. Arky hurries out in search of the man, but he's already gone. Freaked out, Arky decides to drive away, but is soon followed by a police car. Thinking he's in trouble, Arky curses, but to his surprise, the police car drives past him. Relieved, Arky sits back only to find his lookalike appearing in the passenger seat. The man grabs the steering wheel as Arky screams. The two fight for control of the car until they crash onto a tree. Arky's body is thrown out of the windshield while his double is nowhere to be found. Soon, his accident reaches FBI Special Agents Mulder and Scully. Mulder explains that Arky survived the accident but is currently in county jail for drunk driving. According to Arky's statement, the accident was caused by another man who looked exactly like him. Scully thinks Arky just imagined it, but Mulder gives her more file cases of other people who claim to have seen someone who looked like them right before they died. All the other victims were reported to have died by their own hands, and medical diagnosis suggested a rare form of schizophrenia. Murder lists down how numerous of the victims died from hanging or jumping off bridges. Thus, the case becomes a mass phenomenon. The agents soon visit Arky from prison to hear more about his story. Arky immediately recounts how the man who looked like him grabbed the wheel and caused him to crash. That night was actually not the first time Arky saw his double, as the man had been following him for a week. Arky always saw him in a crowd or through a window, so he thought he was imagining it. Scully questions if he'd taken recreational substances, and Arky is forced to admit to doing so. His lawyer, Dean Cavalier, adds that the accident was Arky's 6th DUI. Mulder clarifies that they're not there to prove he didn't drive under the influence. Instead, they want to know how Arky became the lone survivor amongst everyone who claimed to have seen their double. Hearing this, Arky tells them he has evidence that proves he's not lying. Later, the agents check the scene of the accident, where Mulder points out that the marks on the road prove that the double took control of the wheel, and Arky tried to fight back by pumping the brakes. Still, Scully thinks Arky just fell asleep on the wheel, but Mulder is convinced that Arky isn't smart enough to make up his story. Afterward, the agents visit the psychiatric hospital, where they speak to Dr. Russell, who diagnosed many of the victims who saw their doubles. When Mulder asks if any of the patients exhibited any problems prior, Dr. Russell can't confirm since they weren't diagnosed before, although she points out that they were all people who had trouble with the law. She insists that the patients became mentally ill before their deaths, so Scully considers it a mass hysteria that led all victims to kill themselves. As they discuss, Mulder spots a patient whose room is full of paper with Hangman games. He asks Dr. Russell to talk to her, but the doctor advises against it since the patient has developed a split personality and sometimes turns violent. Still, Mulder insists on looking into her drawings. The patient, Judy, panics upon seeing visitors since she's not ready. Mulder assures her that she looks fine, appeasing her. When Dr. Russell asks her to show the agents her drawings, Judy explains that she's just playing Hangman with her brother, who communicates with her telepathically. Mulder notices that one of the Hangman words is Arky, so he asks if she knows Arky Seavers. Judy insists that she doesn't, but she points to an empty chair, saying that she might. After the agents leave, Judy draws a frowning mouth on the Hangman with Arky's name. Meanwhile, Arky is guided into a different cell as the guard claims that he's being transferred. Once alone, he turns and sees his double inside the cell. That evening, the agents check in at a motel, but learn that they only have one suite available. Still, Mulder takes the room, assuring Scully that he just wants to sleep. Soon, Scully tries to get some rest but wakes up to Mulder at her bedside. He reveals that Arky was just found dead, so they hurry to the prison, where Cavalier is angered at his client's demise and points them to the guard who found him. Scully thinks that Arky did it to himself, but Cavalier points out that he's handcuffed, therefore he couldn't have done it. Both agents agree that it would have been difficult, but it's still possible that Arky tied his belt around his neck despite the handcuffs. Still, Cavalier argues that Arky didn't want to die. After the lawyer angrily walks off, Scully warns Mulder about considering Judy's Hangman drawings. Mulder is open to the idea that Judy is connected despite Scully pointing out how the patient claimed to talk to her brother telepathically. He simply calls the brother as their suspect number 2. The next day, Mulder visits Judy's twin brother Chucky. Immediately, Chucky recognizes him and asks about Scully, whom he's interested in. The agent realizes that Chucky is the same guard who discovered Arky's body last night. Upon walking inside the house, Mulder comments on the countless items littered around, angering Chucky. At his desk, Mulder sees many Hangman drawings like Judy's. When he asks if Chucky plays with his sister, he just calls her a cheater. Mulder deduces that Judy is the good twin, which makes Chucky laugh. As the agent asks to take photographs of the Hangman drawings, Chucky insults him, but claims to be talking to someone standing behind Mulder, who he doesn't see. Meanwhile, Scully visits Judy, though the nurses warn her that she's currently Demon Judy. Peeking inside, Scully sees that the room is dark, which the nurses claim is Demon Judy's way of making them easier targets. Left with no choice, Scully walks in by herself. Already, Judy knows that she's here because of Archie, but she keeps throwing spoons of pudding at her. Scully asks if she's a killer, but Judy claims that she's an angel. The agent then asks if Chucky is involved, and Judy calls her brother the devil's disciple. When Scully accuses Chucky of killing Archie, Judy insists that the kid killed himself. She questions how she'd know that if she wasn't involved in Archie's death, so Judy accuses her of tricking her. Judy then teases Scully about her relationship with Mulder, claiming that she can make her go away so she can have the handsome agent to herself. Seeing that she's not getting anywhere with Judy, Scully walks to the door but pauses when the patient mocks her for being past her childbearing years. Despite telling Judy that she can't hurt her, Scully mulls over her words in the motel. Mulder arrives, so Scully shares that she suspects Judy has influence over the victims, but can't figure out what it is. Mulder agrees that it's some kind of evil, but his partner clarifies that it's a psychic transference instead. Suddenly, she asks if he thinks she's old, to which Mulder assures her that she's not. Meanwhile, Chucky reads in the newspaper that Cavalier claims Archie's death is supernatural. Angered, he starts a hangman game with Judy, who responds to him accordingly, despite being apart. The next day, Mulder visits Chucky, accusing him of picking his victims from the prison. Noticing his more upbeat demeanor, Mulder asks for the Chucky he met the previous day. He threatens to arrest the man for intent to commit a crime, but Chucky laughs as he can accuse the agent of abusing his authority. Suddenly, Chucky turns angry, and Mulder recognizes this as the alter ego he met before. However, the angered man slams the door in his face. At the hospital, Scully visits Judy, who's back to her friendlier self. She asks the woman if she remembers their conversation yesterday, but Judy shakes her head. The agent asks to speak to the Judy from yesterday, so she points to the chair again, insisting that the other her is there. Unconvinced, Scully is sure that Judy has the power to influence others' deaths. Finally, Judy lets the agent in on a secret. She gives Scully medicines that she claims she uses to protect her from the demon Judy. Seeing her in the middle of a game, Scully advises her to stop playing, but Judy worries about going mad because she doesn't have anything else to do. Upon leaving her room, Scully asks the nurses about the medicine, who reveal that they're just bread pills with no medicinal effects. However, they advise her to take them nonetheless, since they also drink them in case they actually have power, like what Judy says. Meanwhile, Cavalier is at a restaurant when he spots his double outside the store window. As the agents arrive at their motel, Cavalier immediately approaches them and recounts how he saw his double. Scully still thinks it's mass hysteria, but Mulder points out that there's actual danger involved, so he advises taking precautions. Scully suggests staying home and calling the police if he experiences another panic attack, while Mulder gives him his calling card. Though Cavalier isn't satisfied with this, he goes home. This further convinces Mulder that there's something evil in the town, but Scully remains skeptical, saying that evil is just a concept. She notes that while people act out violence, it doesn't mean that there's an evil twin in everyone. Mulder, however, thinks otherwise when it comes to Chucky and Judy. Soon, Cavalier arrives home and empties his garage of tools. He also takes firearms from his safe and dumps everything in the driveway, much to a neighbor's surprise. He then gathers his clothes but drops everything when he realizes that he'd be leaving his samurai sword collection. Cavalier starts collecting the swords but wounds himself in the process. While tending to his wound, he hears someone brandishing one of the swords. He goes out to check and finds his doppelganger wielding the weapon. Later that evening, the agents arrive at his house, where they find Cavalier's head chopped off. The police responded to a concerned neighbor's call who witnessed the lawyer dumping weapons in his driveway. The doors were locked from the inside, yet everyone agrees that a man can't simply cut off his own head with a sword. As Scully returns to her car, she spots her double from the crowd outside. The woman quickly disappears, so she tries to shrug it off. Later, Scully can't sleep, so she goes to Mulder's bed, sharing her worries about the case. She asks him to hold her, so Mulder allows it in his bed. While they cuddle, Scully asks what will happen when they're old. She wonders if they'll still be together when they retire, so Mulder promises to always be with her. Scully, however, worries if Mulder meets someone who can have kids with him. He says that can be her, but she doubts she can still have kids, clearly affected by Demon Judy's insults. Mulder then asks what's stopping her from trying, so Scully notes that she feels like the world is going to hell, and they're the only ones who can stop it. Despite their worries about the future, Scully is sure they can think of something to hold on to. Unknown to them, Scully's double watches the two. At the hospital, Judy is playing the hangman again. After sleeping with his partner, Mulder goes to the bathroom and sees his double in the mirror. Immediately, he wakes Scully and reveals that he saw his double. Scully confesses to seeing hers earlier, so Mulder is convinced that they're both being targeted. However, Scully is still sure that it's hysteria, telling her partner to calm down. Unconvinced, Mulder tells her to hurry to the hospital. Meanwhile, Judy insists that there are two L's in the name as she's targeting Scully, but Chucky insists on only one L as he's targeting Mulder instead. As the siblings argue, Scully gets into her car but feels that there's someone with her. Not risking it, Scully drinks Judy's bread pills before driving off. Mulder arrives at Chucky's house as he's still arguing with his sister in the middle of the game. Before finding him, however, Mulder finds his double blocking his path instead. Driven to kill Scully, Judy cheats on the game and writes more letters despite Chucky not agreeing. This makes Scully see her double in the backseat of her car. Still holding on to hope that it's just hysteria, the agent tells her double that she's only a psychic manifestation. Even if Mulder is right and she's an evil incarnate, Scully deems that she can't be more than that. Suddenly, her double disappears. Meanwhile, Mulder draws his gun at his double, who mimics his movements. He tries to run but gets tackled, so the two Mulders fight until one topples a shelf over the other. The bickering siblings finally resort to writing each other's names on the hangman, making them see their own doppelgangers. Finally, Scully arrives at the hospital, only to see Judy suddenly jumping against the door. Scared, the nurses refuse to go in, so Scully forces the door open by herself. When she does, however, she finds Judy dead. At the same time, Mulder crawls out from under the shelf, seeing that his double is gone. He searches the house and finds Chucky dead with bruises on his neck. On the wall, he also finds old hangman drawings marked with Mom and Dad, who might have been the twins' first victims. Done with the case, Scully packs up in the motel, but Mulder wants to stay longer, though he claims to only want some extra sleep. Before he goes, he tells his partner to call him if she needs him, but Scully claims that she won't. Disappointed, Mulder heads to bed, but Scully reconsiders and joins him anyway.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.